Hi, it's Bumble. Welcome back to my channel. So this is the last of the movie reviews of movies I watched on a cruise. Basically, it feels kind of funny because like FNAF 2 I watched on a plane, and then 5 of these movies I watched on a boat. And I feel a little bad with some of the movies I watched in the cruise where I had to watch them on a really small screen from like the farthest point away in the room and not like on a TV at home or something. I feel like this one would have been cool to see on a TV or in a movie theater or something, but that's just kind of how it turned out. I mean, at least it wasn't like FNAF 2 where I had to watch it on my phone where it's like an even smaller screen. So what was kind of cool with the cruise was that it had a lot of new movies that had just come out in theaters or within like the past 2 years or so, and this was one I didn't get to see, but I remember it like in theaters or anything, but I remember I wanted to see, and I kind of just forgot to. This just kind of keeps happening, or like there's even movies right now I want to go see in theaters. Like I heard Project Hail Mary was really good and I wanted to see that. I actually did want to make the effort to see that in theaters, but I think now that I've gotten back from my trip, it's just not in, I don't think it's in theaters anymore, so I think I missed out on that. And then the Super Mario Galaxy movie, the second one, or you know what I mean, I think I've heard like mixed things on it, so I'm okay with not seeing that one in a movie theater. But this one I did. I don't remember when this came out actually. It feels like it was like last year's, like early last year. But it's from, oh, okay, it's May of last year. Yeah, so I'm like almost a year late on this. Basically, I'm recording this in early April 2026. Cool, but that's okay. I don't think there's been any more Marvel movies after this. I'm not sure. So in my head I knew this was like, you know, the newest one basically. And I was like, cool, I finally get to watch this. So I watched this. This was like the final movie I'd watched. It was like the day before I had to go home too, and I stayed up late watching this with my mom, and it was kind of interesting because I'd never seen this before, but my mom apparently had, and that's why I wasn't sure when this movie came out, because she was like, yeah, I'd seen this, and I was like, I know you didn't go to see this in a theater, and we don't have Disney Plus. Where did you watch this movie? So I think that means it was probably on streaming or YouTube TV or on something on TV at this point. So I guess, yeah, I was later in this than I thought I was. But yeah, just as a clarification, as a reminder, because you're gonna get like some of the older Marvel movies and Avenger movies and stuff, reviews of those from me in July. I watched all of those first. I feel like I have to clarify that if it makes listening to those later after, you know, hearing me talk about this one or some of the newer Marvel movies. I know I'm watching all of these like really, really out of order, and that includes when I post these. I only have 4 paragraphs of notes of this. I did not realize, but I liked this movie enough. I wanted to talk about it anyway. It's kind of interesting because even when the movies were coming out, I watched Avengers Endgame. That was the last Marvel movie I've seen in the movie theater, and then that was it. I kind of just stopped caring about the MCU, and then there was all these TV shows that came out, and I haven't really I haven't watched any of them except a little bit of one of them. So I don't know if some of the characters in those are characters that are in this. I at least knew who like some of the characters were in this, like Elena is like the main character of this movie, and I knew that I remembered her as one of the characters, her and her dad Alexei, in the Black Widow movie. I know they're all like kind of related and stuff. And I actually had forgotten about this movie until I watched this one. And Elena keeps talking about her sister, and I'm like, oh yeah, your sister Black Widow, and I like remembered and stuff. And then Bucky is someone that's also part of the Thunderbolts team, and that was something that I was just like, oh, I need to get on top of things, because there's a lot of Marvel movies, especially with the older ones, I haven't seen in years. Like I haven't seen the Iron Man ones in years. But with the Captain America ones, because there's like 4 or 5 of those now, I haven't seen any of them, and that made it kind of less impactful during certain scenes of a lot of the Avengers movies, where there was a lot of context or stuff with the characters I didn't either understand, or the emotional impact of those, and I could just tell when I was watching those. So then that continues into this movie too, where I don't really know anything about like Bucky as a character, but he seems really cool, and he's kind of like Elena's the one that's like the team leader of the Thunderbolts new Avengers of this movie, but then Bucky's the one that, you know, because they're all kind of misfits and losers, that seems like the most experienced and kind of probably seems like the oldest out of everyone in the group in a sense, because the whole like time travel thing, again, this is why I gotta watch the Captain America movies, so I know all this stuff. But yeah, those 3 were the ones I recognized, and then there's other people. There's like these various like, I don't know, like mercenaries or whatever. They're all like hired by the same people, that they're trying to kill each other, and 2 of them one of them just straight up dies, but 2 of them end up joining the group. There's this lady named Ava, who has like ghost-like abilities where she like goes through walls and stuff. I thought her abilities were really cool, but like personality-wise, she doesn't really stand out or anything. She just feels like she's kind of there. I don't know if it's because her abilities are too like OP compared to everyone else's, so it's one of those things I notice sometimes in Marvel movies where it's like you have a character that's stronger than everyone else, so you need to purposely limit their screen time so that, you know, then the movie would be over. And then there's this guy, they keep making fun of him and referring to him as like a bootleg Captain America. Oh yeah, okay, yeah, his name is John Walker. All right, I knew that he was like a super soldier and also part of like the US Army or something. I didn't really know anything else about him. Okay, I had to read on Wikipedia because I didn't remember like anything about this character. Yeah, okay, Steve Rogers' successor. Okay, yeah, see, he's from a mini-series called The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I didn't know that, so I didn't know who his character was. Cool. Yeah, so I didn't like him. Like, Ava I was okay with, but, you know, she didn't really stand out to me as a character or anything. And then with John Walker, I just found him really annoying. I wrote in my notes, the guy with the shield was an asshole and kind of annoying. He did get a bit better towards the end once the group kind of starts to work together a bit more, but I didn't like him, so I thought him and Ava were gonna be like temporary companions, because it's them and Elena, and they end up in this, I thought it was underground area or something, where they're all sent to kill each other, and they instead end up trying to work together to escape. And there's this guy named Bob with them, who's actually like the most important character in this movie, actually. But yeah, I thought they were just temporary companions, but then it turns out they were part of the Thunderbolts team, and once I realized that, I was like, dang it. But that's how it is. Maybe they'll get better as time goes on, but yeah. But Elena's pretty cool as the main character. I liked her. I didn't really remember much from you know, when she's in like the Black Widow movie and stuff. I felt bad for her, honestly, as one of the main themes of this movie is just depression, actually. mostly through the character Bob. Like, literally the first note in my notes says, and it's from when I was writing about the end, it just says, what do you mean the final boss is weaponized depression? So I'll go into that later. But yeah, she seems a bit kind of lost and depressed herself, Elena, at the start of the movie, where she's describing of like she's doing her job but she's kind of without purpose. And then there's a part later in the movie, so it's like this whole thing with her where she ends up kind of accidentally forming this superhero team, but it turns out to be a really good thing for her of getting her to connect with other people and stuff. And there's a part later on where she's telling her dad that she's like crying and saying about how like her sister's dead and her dad never reached out to her, and that made me kind of sad. I just felt really bad for her throughout the whole thing. And then her dad, Alexei, is pretty cool, where he's like a kind of a funny guy. He really loves his daughter, man. He embarrasses her a bit, and he just wants to be a hero in the spotlight again. And he's like fully supportive of Elena not wanting to be depressed, and I thought it was kind of sweet. He reminds her of her childhood soccer team, and then that's what the superhero team ends up being named about. Because it was funny to me when I didn't know about the twist with the title or what the asterisk was for when the stuff about this movie was originally coming out, and then it was like a big thing of the name change and what it actually means, where it's Thunderbolts, the new Avengers. So it's like the name of the Avengers group is just named after part of this one really long name for a childhood soccer team. I did not expect that's the reason why the movie's called Thunderbolts, but I actually really like that. And it relates to the story too, where the soccer team was apparently really, really bad and they never won a single game, but they worked together anyway. And everyone in this superhero team are like, they're skilled at what they do and stuff, but they're all just losers. It's such a completely different vibe with like the other Avengers group and stuff, where it's, you know, it's all these people that have like multiple movies and they all have their own adventures and they're all like heroes in their own right. So it's really cool when they all join up together, you know, for the first Avengers movie in like 2012, and you finally get to see them all interact, and you know, they become like this super important team. And then with this group, it's that they're just a bunch of strangers that kind of end up together and then sort of just a team at the end, but they're all kind of individually just losers basically, and they don't really fit in, but they end up sort of caring about each other at least a teeny bit by the end. I do like that none of them really like each other. They're constantly arguing throughout the whole movie, and they're all trying to kill each other and stuff, especially at the beginning. That's how they're originally brought together, because I was a little worried going into this. I thought, oh, okay, it's a group of people that don't like each other and stuff, and is it going to be like Suicide Squad? And I'm glad. Okay, there's like 2 Suicide Squad movies, right? The first one kind of sucks, and the second one is really, really funny. But with this one, they're not. What's nice is they're not like a group of criminals or anything. They're just kind of brought together. They're not really even like forced together either. Well, they kind of are a little bit. They're like trying to escape and they're kind of stuck together a bit. But it's not like with Suicide Squad where, you know, Amanda Walker sticks them all together and it's like, okay, if you don't work together, you're going to or don't follow our rules, you're going to get electrically shocked or whatever. It's not any of that really, which is nice. Kind of a nice change of pace. Which I will say, though, this movie is actually kind of funny, but it's not as funny as Suicide Squad. Or wait, shit. The thing that sucks with talking about Suicide Squad is there's Suicide Squad and The Suicide Squad, and I don't remember which one's which. Whichever one has the shark guy, that one, and there's like a shark guy, and there's a polka dot guy, and there's this girl that controls rats. Whichever one that one is, that is really, really freaking funny, and I'd love to watch it. I was talking to my dad about it. He watched that while I was away from home and said it was like his third time watching it, and he still laughed just as hard. There's other reasons that I like it besides it being funny, but that's like the main one. This movie is sadly not as funny, but I think they're both good. Sorry, I feel like I just kind of had to make the Suicide Squad. It kind of gives that vibe a little bit, but I'm glad that Thunderbolts is able to, stand on its own and stuff. It's not just like Marvel Suicide Squad version or something. But yeah, I have mixed feelings on the team, but I do like that they don't really get along or anything, and it also feels different from like Guardians of the Galaxy. I guess this is like a thing that keeps happening in these movies of like people that are all kind of dangerous in their own right end up forced together. I thought the villain in this was actually pretty cool too. She's played by Julia Louis-Dreyfus, who I feel bad that no matter what movie I see her in, I just mentally cannot separate her in my head as Elaine from Seinfeld. I watched Seinfeld like for the first time 2 or 3 years ago, but I'm so used to her as that character, so it's always weird for me seeing her. Not that Elaine in Seinfeld is the perfect person as a character, but it's weird for me seeing that actress playing villains because I'm just used to her as Elaine from Seinfeld. But she plays the villain of this movie, Valentina. It was kind of interesting where she's the one that hired a lot of these characters to work for her, and she's the reason they end up coming together, that she has to get them to kill each other because it's all evidence of this. She tried to make her own superhero and fail, and the whole project was a failure, but then not really, so she's like, I gotta destroy all the evidence of this. And I'm trying to think what I want to say. Sorry, I only have like 4 paragraphs of notes, and I'm going off. No. I don't have notes to talk about the villain character, so I'm having to go off of memory. Yeah, she's just a character that just is trying to make her own superhero and be like the strongest person in a sense. Like, she even uses the Avengers Tower, which feels really weird as like her base of operations and stuff. And yeah, she creates this superhero project, and as soon as she finds out, it actually worked after all, she gets super interested and she's trying to kill the main characters. And at the end of the movie, she announces to the world, trying in like a way to kind of not redeem herself, but like in the public eye, of being like, yeah, I put together this superhero team, this is your new Avengers. And the characters are like, wait, what? And that's when that idea is introduced of them being the new Avengers, which is funny because there's an after credits scene where they get like copyright infringement for the name or whatever, but then the characters tell her, like, because the ending's really funny to me, where they find Valentina and the Thunderbolts are gonna beat the shit out of her or something, and then it turns into a surprise, it's a press tour thing, and they just whisper to her and tell her like, oh yeah, we own you now, like you're not getting away with this, basically. But yeah, I thought she was kind of a cool character. There's a part where you get her backstory, and it's kind of interesting the way you get some of the backstory for some of these characters, and that means I have to talk about Bob. I think Bob was like my favorite part of this movie, actually. As like, Valentine is the villain, but not the character that they're having to fight at the end. I'm gonna have to explain that, but there's this part where you learn Valentina's backstory, where she's like a small child and she sees her father die, but it's like her as an adult watching this memory, and it's like the one part of the movie where she is like really vulnerable, basically. Like she's this person who's trying to stay on top of the situation and like everything else with this movie, but this is like the one time where she finally can't control something and is just forced to watch it. And I thought that was a really interesting scene. But anyway, she comes up with this whole superhero project called Sentry, and it ends up going wrong, and there's one person who survives, and his name is Bob. And he's a really interesting character to me, where, they give, and it's like one of the only things I know about like the Captain America movies, because like I said, I gotta watch those. They give Steve Rogers the serum, that makes him become really strong and becomes Captain America. But then apparently in this movie, what if you gave the serum to someone that's just really depressed, and the characters, like Valentina assumes you would just create another Captain America, and instead you make a guy that just has like weaponized depression. It's pretty crazy, where instead he makes people turn into these like hopeless shadows and everything. I think it's really cool, honestly, where Bob, he doesn't even know he has powers originally. He's just some guy that the Thunderbolts end up finding before they're even a team, and they have to kind of protect him and stuff, because they just think he's some citizen and he doesn't remember anything. And then he's causing people he interacts with to he takes them into kind of like a mental world, basically, where they're seeing flashbacks to things in their life that I'm assuming it's like the point where they felt the most hopeless or something. That's kind of the way I interpreted it. And he's just causing this to happen to people, and they don't even realize he's like doing it or anything. They're just like, oh, that was weird, which is kind of cool to have as an ability, actually. I mean, not really like a happy one, but I just find it interesting. And then Valentina realizes, oh shit, this is the guy from the trials and we need to go. And she tries to manipulate him, and it just kind of doesn't really work, of saying like, hey, the Thunderbolts don't actually care about you. I'm the only person you need to care about, because she's like trying to weaponize him, basically. But you can tell, of course she doesn't really care about him. The only person that really does actually is Elena, and I actually really like their sort of, they kind of end up as like friends by the end, where Elena gives the really wrong advice to give to someone, to Bob, of where he's like, hey, what do you do if you're with some of these emotions? And she's saying about how like, oh gosh, it was a really good line too. Wish I could remember what it was. I should have written it down, where she talks about like, because she's feeling similar things of like feeling alone and feeling lonely, and having to shove those feelings down as far as you can, which is kind of the opposite advice that Bob needs. And Elena realizes this later when she tells Bob, like, hey, I gave you the wrong advice earlier. You actually need to like get out and talk to people, instead of isolating yourself. And then Bob gets turned into this sort of superhero figure that's trying to be controlled by Valentina, named Sentry, where even like his appearance changes too, where he has to wear this sort of like kind of stereotypical like hero outfit with a cape, and his hair ends up being blonde. I did not like the blonde hair look personally, where he's forcibly being fit into this role. And then, and it's all like a whole thing Valentina's trying to stop herself from getting impeached and everything. And then Bob, I thought it was really cool that Bob ends up, like, the Thunderbolts are there, he actually beats them up and everything, like, really, really easily, because he's just that strong as this sort of, it's almost like the Sentry thing is less Bob and more of, almost like an alter ego in a sense, and he actually just lets the Thunderbolt. He could have easily killed them, but he just decides not to because he's like, yeah, they're not going to do anything against me. And Valentine is like, what are you doing? And they get into a whole argument, and he turns on her, and he's like, I'm basically God now, why do I need to listen to you? Which I thought was pretty cool, actually. And he almost kills her and everything, and then he transforms. So, oh yeah, they keep mentioning the word void. I forgot about that, but they use it more as a way to describe emotion than anything else, of being alone and the loneliness. It makes it feel like you have some kind of void inside you, but then that turns into a literal thing, where Bob, Sentry isn't, I misunderstood it. It's like Sentry's not really like an alter ego for Bob. It is Bob, but just being forced in this like superhero role. But Void is the name of his like actual alter ego, where there's a reason I said weaponized depression earlier. He literally turns into this, and I think it's cool, like character design wise, in a sense, where he goes from looking like a normal guy to being like literally a 3D silhouette of himself, except with these like teeny tiny eyes. It kind of reminded me of oh gosh, I don't remember the character's name is. Bob kind of reminds me of, in one of the Spider-Verse movies, I think it's the second one, where there's this guy who has the ability to make black holes, and he's treated as like a joke villain at first, where it kind of just reminded me of like Portal, like the game, and then he ends up becoming the main villain, and it's like the way he ends up using the holes or whatever ends up actually having horrible consequences, and his design changes, where he's just this guy that doesn't have a face and is covered in all of these holes. I feel like the character Bob in this movie, but also his design change when he becomes Void, like really reminded me of that, which is kind of cool. But yeah, he's able to do this thing where he just covers the city in darkness, and it's kind of weird to watch, where it's like he'll kind of reach out his hand towards someone. He doesn't even need to like physically touch them, and then all of a sudden the person, you hear like a scream sound, and they become a shadow that's on the floor, and everything just gets covered in like complete darkness. And you don't die from that, because like Elena goes in there and she has a childhood memory, and you're basically stuck in this, I don't know if I even call it a labyrinth. It's like never-ending rooms of just like your worst memories, and this happens to everyone in the entire city, which is like terrifying in itself. But then she ends up finding Bob, like actual Bob. He's just in a room going through his own like traumas and stuff, and then the other Thunderbolts end up showing up, and Bob has to fight the Void version of himself. Hold on, let me check my notes really quick. And he just beats the shit out of it. Like the Thunderbolts end up giving him a really big hug, and it makes him feel a little better. And he beats the shit out of the Void Shadow, and I thought, man, I want to punch the shit out of my depression too. And then they end up everything kind of just goes back to normal. And then it's kind of interesting where there's like a post-credit scene where the Thunderbolts, they're now like the new Avengers and stuff. They, I think, have their own, I don't know if they have their own headquarters or something. And Bob is also there. It's kind of a little confusing to me if he's on the team or not, because he just lives with them now, or like for these meetings and stuff. But he's sitting like really far away from them. But you know what I thought was interesting is, like, he like physically fights his depression, right? But it doesn't just go away. Like when he's talking to them and stuff, I guess there was something he was supposed to do and he didn't do it. And there's this line he says about like, oh, at least I did the dishes, which kind of shows like it's never really gone, And then you have, after the scene, it says the new Avengers and Bob will return. So I guess that means he's not part of the team, but he's important enough. I mean, they do ask like why he's unable to help fight, and he says like do you really want me to have my alter ego back to have my powers? So it's basically, I mean, he is stronger than all of them with his abilities, but that would put him in that out of control state again. So I'm imagining it's kind of like how the Hulk was in some of the other Avengers movies, where it's like he's like the really strong person, but it's like sometimes they needed him, but if they brought him out, they have to deal with like the consequences of that. I feel like that's probably how Bob's going to be treated. I don't know. Or I don't know if that means if later he'll have control over his abilities. I mean, if he's being included in the next Avengers movie, if he's important enough for that, then that means he's gonna do some cool stuff later and be important and stuff. But then they end up seeing the Fantastic Four ship, which I was a little confused by that, because that's the thing. I didn't know the order of when the Fantastic Four First Steps and Thunderbolts came out. So I'm assuming that means that this one came first, and then there's Fantastic Four, because I'm assuming seeing the Fantastic Four in space, there's like 2 times they end up in space. One of them's in their own movie when they go to confront Galactus, but what they could have been seeing in this movie might have been when they originally went to space and got their powers. I don't know. I mean, it was a ship that had the 4 on the side, and I'm assuming the Fantastic Four only became that group once they got superpowers, so it's at some point I'm assuming during the Fantastic Four. But yeah, nice that I saw both movies, so I feel like I understand a little bit more with the after credits stuff. But either way, both of those teams, the Thunderbolts and the Fantastic Four, are going to be in a movie together at some point, so that sounds pretty cool to me. I feel like I have to keep calling this group the Thunderbolts, though, because calling them the Avengers, it's like there's already an Avengers team, but calling them the New Avengers feels weird. And they have a different vibe, too, like, even costume-wise. Like, I was explaining this to my mom when I finished watching this movie, of, like, how with the other Avengers team, you know, they all have different color schemes. Like, the Hulk is green and Captain America's blue and Iron Man is in a red and gold suit. And it's only really, I think, like 2 of the members that actually wear black. And then with this one, what was kind of tricky, and it makes me hope that they get different costumes eventually, if this is going to be like its own Avengers team and stuff. They all wear black. They all wear really similar costumes. So it makes it hard when there's scenes when they're all kind of close together to like kind of tell who's who. I kind of do hope they do get different like colors and stuff. Or it's also that their colors are just a lot more muted and everything. Hold on, I'm reading something on here. But yeah, that's pretty much it. But I liked this movie. I really liked Elena, especially as a main character, and her struggling with her own issues at the beginning of the movie, and then the Thunderbolts team ends up being important for her, where she kind of has a purpose now and people that care about her and stuff, or like more people that care about her, I should say, because her dad already cared about her a lot. I really liked their father-daughter relationship in this movie. I thought it was really nice. But the team itself, with them interacting with each other, is kind of fun to watch as well. You know, I already really like Bob. And I feel like this movie handled the topic of like depression and mental health very well, actually. Kind of hit a bit close to home at times. But I mean, that's a good thing. That means it's doing its job. But yeah, I wasn't expecting that. It was kind of interesting when I watched the movie. I was thinking of like, you know, with the original Avengers team in 2012, they're like fighting Loki and stuff, and there's like all this like magic space things and whatever. And then with this movie, they're fighting Bob, and it goes a bit darker, I guess. I don't know. It's a very different vibe, but I'm cool with it. And we'll see where that takes us for, you know, Avengers Doomsday, which sounds like there's gonna be a lot in it. I don't really know Doctor Doom as a character anyway. I just know apparently he's gonna be like played by Robert Downey Jr. I don't really know how I feel about that. I feel kind of a little disappointed actually, but that's okay. All right, thanks for watching. Bye bye.